Call the Honourable Ruth Dyson.
Mr Speaker, it's a great pleasure for me to rise and join the calls of support for the Kermadec Ocean Sanctuary Bill, and I want to begin by making a genuine commitment of acknowledgement to the hard work and passion shown by the Minister responsible for the bill, the Honourable Nick Smith. We're in different parties, but we share a passion for protection of marine environment, and on this particular occasion I think the tributes that have been paid to him and his drive and the fact that this is regarded as a gold standard have been well earned. So I want to place on record my acknowledgement of his work and our support for this legislation. The Kermadec is a pretty amazing place. The drive for the sanctuary has been not driven from within this Parliament, although it's certainly been Labour's policy for a little while to support legislative protection through a sanctuary bill. But the drive for the protection has come from people outside this Parliament, and they deserve an equal tribute to that which I've given to the Minister, because they've been absolutely fearless and consistent, passionate, factually based, and have moved the whole of Parliament to this position. Oh, I hope the whole of Parliament. I haven't heard the ACT contribution yet, and you never know, actually, when it comes to that party, but I hope the whole of Parliament is able to give their support. So I want to acknowledge not only, but in particular, the Pew organisation represented in New Zealand through Bronwyn Golder, Forest and Bird, represented on this issue particularly by Anton van Helden, and WWF, again represented particularly on this issue by Alex Smith. There are others who have worked as well, but those three individuals and organisations certainly deserve tribute. They've been amazing. The launch of the legislation held in the West Wing foyer of the Beehive, which is a pretty noisy place at the best of time, has a lot of traffic going through it, was a buzz with excitement last week, and I really enjoyed the fact that so many of our political parties were able to join with those organisations that I've just noted and celebrate such a good decision. It won't be without controversy, I'm sure, as it goes through the Select Committee, and I look forward to hearing from the chair of the Select Committee, who I'm sure is keen to take a call soon, but also at the second reading here of the deliberations, because a piece of legislation like this will not be entirely without controversy, but I certainly hope that the Select Committee is able to give it the consideration that it deserves. It warrants it. It warrants coming back to this House in a better shape, if that's possible, as a result of submissions that were made. The Kermadec, the area that we're talking about, has 11% of the world's seabird species. That's a lot. That's a lot in just one area, although it is a big area. There's a 10,000 metre depth of Kermadec Tonga Trench, and it has 32 different fish species, New Zealand fish species within it. A lot of people don't know that the Kermadec is in New Zealand territory. They think it's somewhere else, and I'd like to pose a question to the Minister and to the Chair of the Select Committee, because I have not yet been able to get an answer, and I assume they'll know the answer to this question. Who's the Member of Parliament for the Kermadec? I'm really disappointed that neither the Minister nor the Chair of the Select Committee at this stage of the debate knows the answer, but I bet that by the end of the third reading we will have it. I used to be the Member of Parliament for the Chatham Islands. It was a great privilege. It was stolen off me rather unfairly in boundary changes, and now comes under Rongotai, and there's a few other beautiful islands that we're fortunate to have. I know that the member for Coromandel has quite a few of them in his patch, because he's often boasting about them, and I know that Jacinda Ardern has often told of the islands that are attached to Auckland Central electorate with some pride, but I don't know who the Member of Parliament for the Kermadec is, so I'd like that to be the first challenge for the... the member for Nelson is offering, and I can't yet see a geographical connection, but I suppose the same water touches the beaches around Nelson area as doing the Kermadec. But seriously, it's an interesting question, and I know a number of us would really like it. One of the issues that has been under debate is whether the governance structure of the sanctuary is going to be that of co-management, and that was what was originally proposed, and that isn't what is in the legislation, and I'm sure will be raised again during the Select Committee consideration. I want to acknowledge Rick Witana from Te Opuri and Harry Burkhardt from Ngāti Kuri, who spoke at the launch of this legislation, but who have long been involved and have had very open and serious discussions about the governance structure. This is not a marine sanctuary that's set up in the same way as many others are. It's more along the lines of the Fjordland protection, the Guardians of Fjordland, set up under separate legislation, but this is different again in that it has both Ngāti Kuri and Te Opuri represented as part of that structure. There'll be, as I said, some debate about that. A couple of other points that I want to make in relation to the administration. The first is that even though the Minister for the Environment introduced the legislation, and I know did all the hard work to get it to this stage, the Department of Conservation will actually administer and manage the sanctuary. That's appropriate, that's good. I'm very concerned though, because in recent reports in the media, the Department of Conservation is quoted as saying to their minister, not the minister responsible for this bill, but the minister responsible for the Department of Conservation, that they are so short of money that they are likely to be unable to fulfil their statutory obligations. And here we are giving them, in this legislation, a huge amount more work to do. Monitoring a marine sanctuary. Now, it is appropriate, as I said, for the Department of Conservation to have this role. They currently have amazing staff and volunteers who work on Rowell Island, and I want to pay a tribute to them. I also want to echo the words of Minister Nick Smith in paying a particular tribute to those who have lost their lives on Rowell, particularly the young volunteers who did so recently, one by drowning and one in a volcano explosion. Those are tragedies. People who are so passionate that they dedicate a part of their life to do this conservation work and paid the ultimate price for it. So they should be acknowledged as well. But if we were expecting the Department of Conservation to manage this huge marine sanctuary, where is the money going to come from? If we want it done properly, they must be properly resourced, and if recent media coverage is anything to go by, they can't even do their current work within the money that they've got. Millions and millions and millions of dollars has been slashed from their budget over the last 7 years without any justification, in my view, and we just need to make sure that we put the government's money, the taxpayers' money, where the mouths of ministers are in this legislation, and make sure that the department is able to fulfil its job. The second point that I want to make, that again I'm sure will be raised during the Select Committee process, is about the breadth of marine scientific research which will be allowed under this legislation. We're told that research ordinarily would breach the provisions of the statute, but there are exemptions that can be made by the EPA, the Environmental Protection Authority. I think that's a good process. If you're going to have exemptions, of course you should have a robust process, and I have no concerns at all about the integrity of the processes of the EPA. But we do know that in some instances the intention of Parliament, of legislation, presumably of ministers, is often watered down when it comes to the actions. And again, recent reports about the extraction of swamp curry are an example of that. Something that we all thought in this House was clearly not allowed has been permitted by what I think has been quite a lightweight response by the department responsible. I think in this case it was the MPI rather than Environment or Conservation. So, Mr Speaker, this is a great way to start the Parliamentary Week with a celebration of protection of an extraordinary piece of water, of underground volcanoes, of bird life and of fish, whales and dolphins. The Kermadec has got it all. It's a brilliant part of the world, and it's with great pride that this Parliament is taking this step and moving to better protection.
Kia ora.